We had one friend in high school. His name was Rory Donegan. Anyway, this guy Donegan, right? He was in the Saddle Club, which was like a preteen to young teen girls show about horses. And he was like the token boy that was like a love interest, such like stable hand. We just ripped him about being in the Saddle Club 24/7. Like, we would sing the song. Because he's like a child actor, right? He's like, fuck you guys. Like, I'm rich. How much money do you guys have in your bank account? Like, you guys are fucking poor. And it didn't do anything. Like, reminding us that we had $15 to our name and he was like catching checks in school holidays. At some stage, we had to concede that it was kind of cool. But when we were young, man, we ripped him for it. Saddle Club went hard. Yeah, it's just one of those things though that like ultimately you're catching a bag and it is kind of cool that you're an actor and stuff. Like I don't know if we were jealous, but we were just like stoner haters. He's like, I get to hang out with hot girls and get paid. Like, none of these really like actually true statements for the time helped his case. I don't know why. We had this hole at school that was like a grate. And we would sit on these chairs, which were called the PBs, which stood for the porn benches. Because how they started was a group of kids sitting there and talking about their favorite porn. It evolved past that. But every lunchtime we would sit on this bench. Yeah, right in front of the benches was this metal grate. And it led to a storm drain, which was about 6 feet deep and maybe like 1.5 feet wide. Maybe 2 feet wide. So you could stand in there. And we would put like sticks and leaves and shit over the grate. Like, we'd remove the grate and then put like sticks and leaves, call someone over, they'd fall into this hole, and then we'd put the grate back on over the top of them and they were just caged. And the grate was too heavy to lift with one person. Like, back then we couldn't overhead press it out of its slot. It was too heavy. So you just had a prisoner. Dudes would like try to smoke weed and stuff in the hole. Let's like smoke cigs down there. We'd leave people in there while like classes started and stuff. Like, anytime someone was getting too cocky in the friend group, riding too high, getting away with too much, put them in the hole. Nah, there were never any bad injuries from being put in the hole. Just a lot of fear. But the thing is, once it happened to you once, promising young AFL career, once it happened to you once, you knew that the hole was there and you were like, someone would be like, hey, come over, man. You'd be like, no chance. We also had there was a part behind the bench which directly sloped. There was this back area. Let me just show you guys really quick. So there was like a wall here. Get a line tool. Like a building. And then this is where we would sit. We would sit here. On a chair. This is where the hole was. And then this whole area here was like a slope with tan bark. But this was all tan bark back here. And so you could corner people in this area here. Because it was like a slope kind of. This whole area was just like shitty tan bark into a fence that led out onto the street. And so anyone sitting here, if there was a disagreement among the boys, you'd get kicked. The two guys would get kicked into this area that were arguing, being little bitches or whatever. And then everybody else would stand like here. So you had no way out because there'd be like 2 guys sitting on the chair, maybe 4 guys standing around here. And you're on a slope. And they'd all throw tan bark at you and yell shower the warriors until you wrestled. And like, you're in a corner between a wall and a gate. You can't really get out. And yeah, you wrestle while being showered with tan bark until someone wins. And then whoever wins the wrestle, that's it. And then you go back. There was another bench. There's another bench here as well. So we would just kick it around this hole. And then there was like a... Like the footy oval started like over here. This is art. I'm going to save this as PBs. Yeah, that's what Shower the Warriors was. Americans call them bark chips. Yeah. This is real life, dude. This is what my friends had. We just had a bunch of rituals and we just stuck to it. I'm speechless. Dude, I have so many stories from this era, like from high school of shit we did. So, I don't know how public schools work in America, but in Australia, it's really hard to fire teachers. My history teacher was this dude who was like pretty clearly an alcoholic. And when he CBF'd teaching the class, he would just wheel in a TV and we'd watch Temple of Doom, but he would only ever put on the first part. Because it was like a 45-minute period, we'd only ever watch the first 45 minutes. So, we'd seen the first 45 minutes of Temple of Doom so many times. And one day he came in and he quizzed us on... We would do the voices and shit, like we would all do the lines. Someone would be short round. So one day he came in with a pop quiz, right, this guy. And it was about his favorite lagers. And I'll never forget this. He was talking to one of my friends, James, and he's like, Jimmy, you're going to know this one. I talked about this one. I took it on the 3-day weekend. I went down to Port Melbourne. What did I buy? And Jimmy was like, Golden Ale, Mr. Combi. And he was like, that's right, Jimmy, that's right. Now, you'll also remember I bought a certain whiskey while I was down there. And we legit knew all of this guy's stories. He would give you like extra points on assignments and shit for this. He was a super homie. We humoured him too. On his good days though, when he wasn't hungover, he was a good storyteller. He told us Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. You just ask him one question and he would talk for the full like 45 minutes. But we had this other history teacher who was just a super bitch. She was just really mean to kids. I don't know, like, she was egregious. I think I came to her class like 2 minutes late once. She told me that I'd never amount to anything, that I'd be a fucking garbage man. Anyway, we would always skip her class. We had double history every second Thursday, me and my best friend at the time. And like clockwork, we would just pull up at school, see the schedule, and be like, nah, fuck that, we're not going. We'd go to a net cafe in the city called Adrenalan. Get me there. Thank God. And the owner for Adrenalan ran like an eBay postal business. So he needed to post games out. But he couldn't leave the internet cafe, right, to go to the post office. So we would go to the post office for him and like get his lunch order, which would be like 6 inches of Subway. He would then get like a large chips from McDonald's, but it had to be fresh. He had like a fucked up lunch order from 3 different places. So if we did all of these errands for us, he would give us a full day of game time. Sounds like a Zelda quest? It pretty much was. Anyway, we would go to this net cafe, alright? And we skipped every second Thursday doing this. Getting this guy Rusty his food order, taking the games to the post office, and just playing Dota 1 and WoW. And we had this, our year coordinator in year 10 was this guy called Mr. Herford. And he was one of those teachers who wanted to be cool with the kids. So we'd be like, hey, Miles and Alex, man, what's up, boys? We'd be like, oh, what's up, Mr. Herford? Like, dap him up and shit. And then he'd be like, oh, boys, sorry to be a pain, but I'm going to need those late notices. Like, all of those absences. And we'd be like, oh, Mr. Herford, man, we'll get them to you. Like, oh, my mum just hasn't had time. Like, whatever. And he'd be like, no stress, boys, no stress. Just make sure you get those to me. We did that to this guy for literally 9 months before he forgot. Like, I don't know if he just gave up or like just cut us some slack. But literally, we just kept giving this guy excuses. And eventually, we just got away with skipping like clockwork every second Thursday. Like, literally nothing ever came of that. Did you guys have that one guy at your school as well who was just like for sure a psycho? Like, would probably grow old to be like either dead or like doing some really heinous stuff. The guy in my class, Max Toolman, who was like this, he was a friend of mine, so he never fucked with us. But he would put his hand up in class and be like... The teacher would ask a question, right? Like, about the subject. And then he'd put his hand up, the teacher would go, yes, Max. And he would turn around and he'd go, Taylor, I've been holding this in for my whole life and I can't hold it anymore. I love you and I want to take you out on a date this weekend. And he would just do this in front of the entire... Like, as a joke, which is really fucked up. But he would full go on a monologue, and if the teacher stopped him, he would be like, miss, this is a really, like, he would just be like, miss, you can't stop me during this, like, I'm pouring my heart out. Anyway, it got to a point where like the school council like coordinator came and talked to us, and he had us like write down things that happened in the class. And one of our friends wrote, sometimes Mr. Blank asks the girls out as a joke. And that guy's name, his nickname just became Mr. Blank from that day on. Because then the guy fucking read them out aloud. Like, so many of us just wrote like no snitching. And he's like, came into the class and he's like, now a lot of the boys have just written no snitching, which you might think is pretty cool. But Mr. Blank here has written... And like, we knew who wrote it. We weren't mad at the guy. But we just thought it was so fucking funny that he said Mr. Blank. That same guy went on to like get suspended for stealing calculators. He made like home videos as well. This part is like not really disturbing. He would bowl his cats along like a polished wooden floor. So like he would slide his cats into solo cans. He'd put like 10-pin bowling solo cans down and then like try to get a strike with his cat. But it's just, the cat's just sliding along like a wooden floor, right? And he had these videos, right, called Cat Bowling 1. Like, he's not abusing he's just like sliding a cat along like a slidey floor. And then there was Cat Bowling 2, Cats of Destruction. And then like 6 months later, one of his cats passed away. And one of the guys was like, one of our friends was like, one too many bowls. And he just starts like, he's ready to fight this guy on site. As soon as someone said one too many bowls, that's what did it to this cat. He was just ready to start swinging. Some funniest home videos type shit. Yeah, it pretty much was. Yeah, he was a content creator, bro. He was into like doing jackass style stuff at home. We had to talk him out of a bunch of ideas. Like, he wanted to put on a fire suit, light himself on fire, and then jump into a lake. So, me and Mr. Blank were in an IT class elective together. This is the same guy I used to skip school with. And the IT teacher just thought we were taking the piss out of him all the time. He thinks we've owned him in some way. Anyway, we have to get swapped to like a crafts class. And so we're already late in the elective, right? And the whole semester or term, the whole thing you're supposed to be doing is building a flyable, like, balsa wood plane. And this teacher, Mr. Choddy, who might be the most useless human being I've ever met, was the main teacher of this class, right? But all you did was follow a guide every lesson and just put this plane together. You just had to use super glue on the balsa wood. That was it. Put the engine on, do some rubber band shit. And the big thing at the end, right, was we were going to be able to fly them. Anyway, me and my friend Mr. Blank, aka Alex, we rushed through ours and we like smash one out. We work super hard in the class to get it done because we know we're late. And then end of semester rolls around and it's time to fly these planes, right? And Mr. Choddy, he's like, let me do the first one to show you guys how it's done. He gets someone's plane, flies it up, straight nosedives it, and just insta-breaks it in about 5 seconds. And then he's like, let me go again. Let me get a mulligan. He gets somebody else's plane. Same thing. And this guy goes through like, I'm not shitting you guys, like 6 student projects, crashing them one by one, just straight into the nose. Like, I think maybe he flies one for like a moment. He's crashing these planes in every way possible. He breaks about half the classes, including ours. And then this was another time when we got bitched to like coordinators that we were being bad students, but this time we actually tried. But this guy, Mr. Choddy, just destroyed everybody in the class's plane on the last day. He was a savage. This kid, Cliff, transferred to our school. And every day, Cliff would be like, because he was from like a rough neighborhood or whatever, and he'd be like, you know, me and my friends hang out at Northland, like Northies, like we're really tough, like. And he told this story one time on a Monday morning about how he could have had a threesome with 2 girls at a party, except he didn't feel like it. And so for the rest of you guys can imagine, we were howling. Like, this guy moved to our class in grade 10 and just told like tall stories and talked about how hard he was nonstop. And so like didn't feel like it just became the fucking meme of the month. Like, you just walk into class and you're like, yeah, you know, someone will say, how's your weekend? You're like, yeah, dude, could have fucked 2 supermodels. Like, you know, Could have jumped in a new Ferrari for free. Like my dad wanted to buy me one, but like didn't feel like it. Teachers would ask you where your homework and shit. You'd be like, I finished it. I just didn't feel like handing it in. Anyway, this didn't feel... He would just be getting like... Every time this guy tried to tell a tall story, he would just be getting pie in his face. Every single time. And one day he'd had enough. He was like, I'll fucking bash you, Max. Like, don't talk shit about me anymore. He's like, fuck you, Max. I'm gonna fucking bash you. And Max is like, oh yeah? Because this guy's a psycho. This guy will fight over nothing. And he was like... He's like, yeah, come and... Because he's like talking shit in class, right? And we have a connecting period. He brings Cliff. Like the whole squad has walked building to building. He's talking shit to this guy. We all have to walk through this class, right? All of us, like, all us guys, like... Maybe like 10 dudes all walking. And then Max is like, come on, Cliff, come on. Let's sort you out. Let's see what you're going to do. He comes over here, like with the whole squad. He puts his head up against the sharp bricks. And he's like, kick my head in like you said you would. He's like, come on, man. In class, you said you were going to kick my head in. And Cliff's just like standing here while we all watch. Cliff can be blue as well. These two are just standing. He's like dumbfounded. Max just has his head up against this sharp brick wall. Like, anyway, like this is like as good as it's going to get. Like a corner like that, right? So our whole squad is walked over to a corner of the building like this. And he's just standing here and he's like, kick my head in, Cliff. He's like, I'll give you you'll get first hit. You just have to kick my head against this wall. And Cliff's like, doesn't know what to say, right? He's speechless. And after about 2 minutes of Max just holding his head up against the wall, taunting Cliff for the whole time, he just takes his head from against the wall, just gives Cliff a big bitch slap. And he's like, didn't think so. Let's go to the next class. And this guy shut up indefinitely. We also called him Clifford the Big Red Dog, which really got to him. There was a lot of Clifford memes. He also said that his father invented Bungie, the company that made Halo, and originally it was Jack Bungie. He said there was something called Jack Bungie, which his dad invented, which became Bungie, which got sold to Microsoft. No cap. And so we would all just be like, Jack Bungie? But yeah, anyway, between that and Jack Bungie, it was doomed for this guy from that day on. So Max was kind of like, you wanted to be friends with him, but he was crazy. Mostly just so that you weren't at the mercy of whatever he was going to do. But yeah, if you ever talk shit about his cats, that was one way to fire him up. He did not like that. I'm not making this person up, I promise. Dude, I wish I had that kind of imagination. Oh, dude, we used to put pins on each other's chairs, though. Fuck, that thumbtacks, man. Dude, we went through a craze of doing, like, every single, like, classic bad behavior thing. Do you guys know wasps? Like, when you fold a piece of paper up and you shoot it with a rubber band. We got so into wasping, like firing wasps, that we would wear hoods so that you could have a hood up and not get shot in the eye on, like, 35, 40 degree days. Like, having a hood on and up, like, if the teacher leaves the room, you put your hood up. The staple did extra damage. Yeah, that's called the So, I was going to get to that. Folding a paper clip or a staple. The paper clip's fucked. That's called a Shanghai. You can actually blind someone with a Shanghai, though. Like, this is what happened in our school. We got really into wasping. There was the Cobras and the something bears. Anyway, I was on the Cobras. And it was like an ongoing team of, like, 5 versus 5 guys in your friend group who you wouldn't wasp. And like, we would fold it, like, teacher would leave, we would just aim for each other's faces, like, aim to put whatever shots on. But it was pretty much always 5v5, right? People would push a table down as like a barricade, if it was like a shitty substitute teacher and you knew like nothing bad was going to happen if they saw the barricade. And we would fire wasps at each other, right? This went on for like months. But then one day someone fired a Shanghai, which is the paperclip folded up. And they can make you bleed through clothes if you fire it hard enough with a good enough rubber band. And pretty quickly after that, like, the course coordinators caught on to... Did I just get comboed here? OP to have glasses? Yeah, glasses were actually OP. None of us had them back then, though. Fill them up with food and milk. Dude, we never had like condoms at our school. Like, we were all such little virgins as well. Like, none of us had girlfriends or anything. We just fucking bullied each other nonstop. We were too busy. Like, all of my friends were just like stoners who wanted to like play Guitar Hero and smoke weed after school and like fucking like just do the whatever funny shit we could to each other while school was going. Yeah, anyway, Wasping ended pretty quickly once Shanghaiing came around because the teachers cracked down on that really hard. And then if you were seen just doing regular Wasp after that, you were in big trouble. I don't know, like we would full drop tables though, create barricades, like yeah, throwing stuff into the fan was a later meme. A really early one that caught on in year 8 or 9 was going under the table and spitting on someone's shoe. Like getting a really big loogie ready and then spitting it on someone's shoe without them noticing. And then untying their shoe as well for extra credit if you wanted to. I don't know where that came from or like why that stuck, but we did that a lot. And that kid, Rory Donovan, who was on Saddle Club, we would say, Dirty Donny got done on the shoes. And everyone would just keep repeating that in this weird, like, old, like, sexual deviant voice of, like, an old, like, English woman, almost. And he would try to talk to us and be like, you've been done on the shoes, Donovan. The teachers for us were just always collateral and trying to bully each other as hard as possible. Which I don't think really makes it better, but we never had... Actually, no, there was one time we had like a 4-story stairwell, right? You can see all the way from the top to the bottom. And there was this bald teacher that everyone hated. Like, we hated him for some reason. And we would get sauce packets and try to squeeze them on his head from like 2 floors up. I'm pretty sure one day someone actually got him with the sauce, like right on the head. Yeah, okay, so picture this. It's like this for multiple stories, right? So you can just duck back and like someone down here is just going to have no idea. And people would try to sauce this guy on the head. Another absolute classic, which is probably like across multiple high schools, is tipping everybody's lockers forward so that when you open them, all of the stuff is just stacked. I don't know if you guys had, like, we had lockers that weren't attached to the wall. They were like a unit that you could move around. So if you got like 2 strong lads, you could tip everything forward. And then as soon as you open your locker, all your shit's just on the floor. That happens to you when you're running late for class, and then you come to class and try to explain what's happened, and the people who tipped your locker are just in tears, man. Because the teacher just doesn't care. Another classic was knowing someone's code and opening their locker and then just reversing the top and bottom shelf. But not changing anything, not stealing anything, not changing anything. Did you guys have a dude at school in like year 7 or 8 who just tried to buy people everything? Like tried to use money to like get friends? We had this one dude who would just buy people stuff at the cafeteria. He would probably spend like $50 a day. I'm like, as a 13-year-old. I think he like had an inheritance or something. And he would just like buy people like ice creams and shit. Dude, getting a Cyclone, a Streets Paddle Pop Cyclone ice cream. There was like a tier list of ice creams. Golden Gay Time was definitely up there. Of like canteen ice creams, right? In my friend group, oh, fuck's sake, I missed the pause buffer. There was like a tier list, right? Cyclones were pretty good. Golden Gay Times were like the best if you could afford it. It was like $2.50, $3 for Golden Gay Time. Cyclones were like $2.10 or something. Anyway, slapping someone's ice cream out of their hand was so fucking funny. At the PBs, we'd be hanging out. We'd be hanging out here, all chilling. Someone would come up here from the canteen this way. You slap their ice cream into the dirt. They'd be looking so chuffed. Dude, that's so brutal. I forgot we used to do that. Like, that wasn't an every time gag, but like once a month, someone would get their ice cream slapped out of their hand. So funny. Fuck, that's good. Oh, there was this one kid who would hang out with us at those same benches called Bassanisi. His name was Nicholas Bassanisi, and we called him Sneezy. And he was just like bottom of the pecking order for whatever reason. Would always get bullied. Got a pie with sauce all over their shoes. I'm weeping like my man's, but yeah, dude. People would start throwing down when they're ice cream. You just start fucking launching. Like, that's grounds to just go straight to fighting. Or chasing someone at least. Usually times, the slapper would just start running. So this guy, Bastisnisi, right? He would always pull up to the spot, those benches, with like a beautiful chicken schnitzel sandwich that his grandma would make him. And the boys, legit, it started off as this one guy called Ninad just taking a bite out of it. Right? He would always just take a bite. And then it started as like one guy would just snatch it and just eat the whole thing. And it got to a point where people were fighting over who was going to steal this guy's sandwich. I'm not making this up. There would be like people like, I'm going to steal Bastisnisi's sandwich. No, I'm going to do it. This was probably like one of the more egregious instances of just straight up. So it got to a point of, so the meta evolved, right? From like one biting to like one person stealing to like multiple people being in the race for who was going to steal it first. And it got to a point where he came up one day with the sandwich, and they were always such nice sandwiches, man. He came up and he just threw it on the ground. He was like, no one's getting it. He would just start throwing it in the bin in front of everybody. I was like, why does this guy still hang out with us? But he would just come and just throw the sandwich in the bin in front of the guys who would try to steal it. Like, he was fully resigned to the fact it was going to get stolen. Sneezy had had enough. It's like the only move really left to him, Rev. It's all he had left. It's so peaceful compared to these horror stories. Yeah. Yeah, there was some truly despicable things we did. At our school as well, you could work at the canteen at lunch if you wanted to. And our friend St. John worked at the canteen at lunch. And he must have passed so much stolen food to us, they eventually got caught. There was like a syndicate of people giving away free food. And it got too big. We would just take a couple of chicken fingers here or there, you know, but people started taking full ice creams and shit. I don't remember what happened when that one got out, but he was like also one of those guys that was just naturally friends with everyone. So we just had so many people looking for the homie card. I feel like if it happens in year 7 though, by year 11, you can do some PR work on puddles and turn that around. Big puds. You can be the man by year 11 and still be called puddles. There was one kid who we weren't really friends with, but he was like an extended part of our friend group. His name was Alex as well, but he lived on a boat, so we just called him Boat Boy forever. His name was just Boat Boy. Oh, there was also Jake the Dragon, who would always wear this dragon t-shirt. Oh, there was another guy called Swifty, because he wore a Taylor Swift t-shirt on his first day. He was like a transfer student. So his name was just Swifty. But people didn't dislike Boat Boy or Swifty or Jake the Dragon. Jake the Dragon is a sick name. We were all kind of like, Jake the Dragon was just a huge fucking nerd. But we were all low-key, we were like, oh, there goes Jake the Dragon. We were like, that's badass. People would play Mario Kart DS in the library at lunchtime. None of my friends did it, but I was always kind of interested. We had an accelerated program, which one of my best friends from like kindergarten was in. And it was called the Task Force for some reason. Anyway, we called them Taskies. And so there was like the kids, and they had their own teachers. How fucked up is that? We had like the alcoholics and like the insane teachers. And these guys had like the teachers who could actually teach their subjects. So it was like school premium. They just did like actual schoolwork in a class that wasn't full of dudes from commission housing and stuff. Like who were shooting each other with wasps and doing all the horrible shit we did to each other. These Taskies, right? They skip year 8. But that was their nickname, Taskies. So that was like for a whole demographic of students. And there was like segregation as well. It was fucked. That's wild. Yeah, like, I think part of the beauty of our public, like there was, of all of the cooked shit that we did to each other, there was never any fear of like actually just getting banged on. Even like actual beatdowns came very, very rarely. That's it. I'll be back, boys. Day 1. I think we made some good progress. Maybe a Sunday stream angle? Actually, fuck it. Maybe I wake up tomorrow.